She was the kind of woman you'd never look at twice. Quiet, tired, invisible. The kind people assume will always just take it and stay silent. But when a 400-pound giant, who'd terrorized an entire neighborhood for years, put his hands on her in front of everyone, she made one choice that changed everything. In 10 seconds, she brought him to his knees. And the whole room realized they'd been wrong about her from the very beginning. This isn't just a story about fighting back. It's about the moment when someone who's been silent their whole life finally speaks. And when they do, the whole world stops to listen. Stay with me, because what you're about to hear will make you rethink everyone you've ever underestimated. Welcome to Fate and Fortune. While you are here, please hit the subscribe button and comment your view on the story and where you're watching from. Let me tell you about a woman named Elena. Not because she was famous or powerful or rich, but because she was invisible. And sometimes the invisible ones are the ones we should never overlook. Elena was 31 years old, but if you looked at her, you'd think she was younger. Maybe it was the way she carried herself, always with her shoulders slightly hunched, like she was trying to take up less space in the world. She stood barely 5 feet tall, with gentle brown eyes that rarely met anyone's gaze. Her black hair was always pulled back in a simple ponytail, and her clothes were always a size too big, hanging off her small frame like she was a child wearing her mother's clothing. She worked at a place called the Corner Cafe in Phoenix, Arizona. It was the kind of restaurant where the lights buzzed too loudly and the smell of old coffee mixed with bacon grease in a way that either made you hungry or slightly sick. The booths had duct tape holding the vinyl together, and the floors squeaked no matter how carefully you walked. Every day, Elena would come in for her shift, put on her apron, and disappear into the background. She'd refill coffee cups, deliver plates, clear tables, all while barely making a sound. The customers didn't remember her face 5 minutes after she left their table. To them, she was just the waitress. Nobody special. Nobody worth noticing. Her manager, a sharp-tongued woman named Brenda, treated her like she was useless. "Elena, for heaven's sake, can you move any slower?" Brenda would snap, her voice cutting through the diner like a knife. "I've seen snails with more hustle than you. What am I even paying you for?" Elena would just nod, whisper an apology so quiet you could barely hear it, and keep working. She never talked back, never defended herself. Just took it, day after day, insult after insult. The other workers didn't know what to make of her. There was Danny, the cook, a cocky guy in his 20s who liked to show off. "Look at her," he'd say to the dishwasher, a kind older man named Frank. "She's scared of her own shadow. If Big Rick ever shows up on her shift, she'll probably faint." Frank would shake his head. "Don't talk like that. You'll jinx us." But it was too late. Because that very night, as the February cold pressed against the windows and the wind howled through the Phoenix streets, the door to the Corner Cafe swung open so hard it nearly came off its hinges. And there he was, Big Rick Sullivan. Now, let me paint you a picture of this man. He wasn't just big. He was massive. 8.5 feet tall, over 400 pounds of muscle and meanness. His shoulders were so wide he had to turn sideways to fit through most doorways. His hands looked like they could crush a bowling ball. His face was all hard angles and old scars, with a crooked nose that had been broken more times than anyone could count. And his eyes, they were cold. The kind of cold that made you feel like you were nothing. Big Rick had been terrorizing that neighborhood for years. He'd walk into businesses and take whatever he wanted. Money from the register. Food from the kitchen. Respect from people who were too afraid to stand up to him. The police had been called on him dozens of times, but he always slipped away. And the few times they caught him, witnesses would suddenly get amnesia. Nobody wanted to be the one who testified against Big Rick. When he walked into the Corner Cafe that night, the whole place went silent. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. Forks froze halfway to mouths. Even the jukebox seemed to quiet down, like it knew something terrible was about to happen. "Evening, folks," Rick said, his voice so deep it made the windows rattle. His eyes scanned the room like a predator counting its prey. Then they landed on the cash register. Then on Brenda. "I'm hungry." Brenda's face went white as a sheet. "Rick, please." Her voice came out as a squeak. "We don't want any trouble. We'll make you whatever you want. Just please don't hurt anyone." Rick laughed, and it was the ugliest sound you've ever heard. Like rocks grinding together. "Hurt anyone? You make it sound like I'm some kind of monster. I'm just a man who wants some respect. Is that so wrong?" He walked toward the counter, and with each step, the floor actually creaked under his weight. Customers started grabbing their kids and rushing for the door. Within 30 seconds, the cafe had emptied out, except for the staff who were trapped and one elderly couple in the back who were too frightened to move. Rick leaned on the counter, and it groaned like it might break. "Here's how this works, Brenda," he said, looking her dead in the eye. "You give me $300 from that register. You make me the biggest meal you've got. And maybe, just maybe, I don't redecorate this place with your face. We clear?" Brenda was crying now, her hands shaking as she opened the register. "Yes, Rick. Whatever you need." And there, standing by table 5 with a coffee pot still in her hand, was Elena. She watched the whole thing unfold, her heart pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. She'd seen bullies before. She knew the type. They fed on fear. They got bigger and meaner every time someone backed down. But Elena also knew something else. She had a 7-year-old daughter named Isabella waiting for her at home. And heroes she knew got hurt. Hurt people couldn't pay rent. So she did what she'd been doing for months. She stayed quiet, stayed small, and hoped he wouldn't notice her. But Rick noticed everyone. Rick's eyes swept across the cafe like searchlights, and then they landed on Elena. She felt her blood turn to ice. "Well, well," he said, straightening up. "Who's this? A new girl?" Elena couldn't move, couldn't speak. Her throat had closed up completely. Brenda stuttered. That's Elena. She just started a few weeks ago. She's nobody, Rick. Just nobody." Rick walked toward Elena, and every step felt like an earthquake. He stopped right in front of her, towering over her like a mountain over a pebble. She had to crane her neck just to see his face. "You scared of me, little girl?" he asked. Elena's throat was so dry she couldn't speak. She just nodded. "Smart," Rick said. He reached out and flicked the name tag on her uniform. "Elena. Pretty name. Tell you what, sweetheart. You bring me my food when it's ready, and maybe I'll leave you a real nice tip. How's that sound?" Elena nodded again, her whole body trembling. "Good girl," Rick said with a yellow-toothed grin. He turned back to Brenda. 300. "Now." Brenda pulled the cash from the register with shaking hands and held it out. Rick snatched it, counted it slowly just to make everyone more nervous, then stuffed it in his jacket. "Danny," Brenda called to the kitchen, her voice breaking. "Make the man his food. Now." Danny, who'd been talking tough just minutes earlier, squeaked out a "yes, ma'am" from behind the grill where he was hiding. Rick walked over to the biggest booth and sat down. The vinyl screamed under his weight. He put his muddy boots up on the opposite seat, leaving dirty prints on the cushion, and stretched out like he owned the place. Elena stood frozen by table 5. She looked at Rick sitting there, so confident, so sure that everyone would just give him what he wanted. She looked at Brenda crying quietly behind the register. She looked at Frank the dishwasher, staring at the floor with the defeated expression of a man who'd given up fighting back years ago. And something inside Elena cracked. Not broke, just cracked. She thought about Isabella, her beautiful little girl with the bright smile and big dreams. Just before Elena had left for work that evening, Isabella had said something that was now echoing in her mind. "Mama, when I grow up, I want to be strong like you." Elena had laughed it off. "Baby, Mama's not strong. I'm just trying my best." But Isabella had looked at her with those serious 7-year-old eyes and said, "You're the strongest person I know." Elena set the coffee pot down on the counter. Her hands had stopped shaking. Brenda noticed. "Elena," she whispered urgently. "Don't. Just bring him his food and stay out of his way. Please." Elena didn't respond. She walked into the kitchen where Danny was frantically putting together a burger the size of a hubcap. "How long?" Elena asked quietly. 5 minutes, maybe less," Danny said without looking at her. "Just keep him happy until then." Elena nodded. She grabbed a glass, filled it with ice water, and walked back out to the dining area. Her footsteps were soft but deliberate. She approached Rick's booth. "Here's some water while you wait," she said, her voice still quiet but steadier now. Rick looked up at her and smiled that predatory smile. "Well, aren't you sweet? You're a good little waitress, aren't you?" He took the glass and drank the entire thing in one gulp, then slammed it down on the table. "More." Elena took the glass and turned to walk away, but Rick's voice stopped her. "Hey!" She turned back. "You got a kid?" Rick asked. Elena's blood went cold. "How did you know that?" "Lucky guess," Rick said, leaning back. "You've got that tired look. Single mom, right? Working your fingers to the bone for some brat who probably doesn't even appreciate you." Elena's jaw tightened. "Don't talk about my daughter." "Ooh," Rick laughed. "Got some fire in you after all." "I like that." Tell you what, you give me your number. Maybe I come by sometime, help you out with the bills. I'm a generous guy. The crack inside Elena widened. No thank you, she said quietly. Rick's smile faded. That wasn't a question, sweetheart. Elena looked him in the eye. And I wasn't asking for your opinion. The cafe went completely silent. Danny dropped a spatula. Brenda gasped. Frank looked up from the dishes. Rick stood up slowly, unfolding to his full 8.5 feet of height. The booth groaned with relief as his weight left it. He took a step toward Elena. What did you just say to me? His voice was low. Dangerous. I said no, Elena repeated. Her hands hung at her sides, loose and ready. You need to learn some manners, Rick growled. He reached out with one massive hand to grab her by the throat. It was the biggest mistake of his life. Elena moved. It wasn't panic. It wasn't a flinch. It was precise. Calculated. Perfect. She stepped to the side, letting his hand pass harmlessly by her shoulder. In the same fluid motion, she pivoted and drove the heel of her palm upward into Rick's elbow. The joint hyperextended with a sickening crack. Rick roared in pain and swung a wild punch with his other fist, a haymaker that would have taken Elena's head clean off. If it had connected. But it didn't. Elena ducked under the punch, dropped low, and swept her leg out in a perfect arc. Rick's legs went out from under him. All 8.5 feet, 400 pounds of him crashed to the floor like a tree being felled. The impact shook the entire cafe. Plates rattled. The jukebox skipped. Before Rick could even process what had happened, Elena was on him. Elena dropped a knee onto Rick's chest, pinning him down with a precision that spoke of years of training. She locked his good arm in a straight arm bar, applying just enough pressure to keep him immobilized but not enough to break anything. Yet, then she did something that made everyone watching question everything they thought they knew about her. She looked down at the giant beneath her, and when she spoke, her voice wasn't a whisper anymore. It was steel. You've been terrorizing these people for years, Elena said, her voice clear and strong. You take their money, their dignity, their peace of mind. You make them afraid to live their lives. She tightened the armbar slightly, and Rick screamed. That ends tonight. Rick bucked and thrashed, trying to throw her off. But Elena had fought men twice her size before. She knew leverage. She knew pressure points. She knew exactly where to place her weight and how much force to apply. She shifted, drove her knee into his solar plexus, and all the air went out of him like a deflated balloon. Please, Rick gasped, his face turning red. Please, I can't breathe. You should have thought about that, Elena said calmly, before you put your hands on people who couldn't fight back. She looked up at Brenda, who was standing frozen behind the counter, her mouth hanging open in shock. Call the police, Elena said. Now. Brenda fumbled for her phone with shaking hands and dialed. Danny and Frank stood by the kitchen window, completely stunned. The tiny waitress they'd dismissed as weak and scared had just taken down the neighborhood's worst nightmare in less than 10 seconds. Elena held Rick down until the sound of sirens filled the air. 3 police cars screeched to a stop outside the cafe, and officers rushed in with their hands on their weapons. Freeze, the lead officer shouted. Elena immediately raised her hands, keeping her knee on Rick's chest. Officer, this man assaulted me and robbed the register. I defended myself. The officers recognized Rick immediately. Sullivan, one of them said, holstering his weapon. We've been looking for you. They pulled Elena off and cuffed Rick, who was still wheezing and holding his injured arm. As they hauled him toward the door, he looked back at Elena with a mixture of pain and complete disbelief. Who the hell are you? He croaked. Elena straightened her uniform, tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear, and went back to being small. Back to being quiet. I'm just a waitress, she said softly. But Rick knew better. Everyone in that cafe knew better. The mouse had never been a mouse at all. She'd been a lion, waiting for the right moment to roar. After the police left, taking Rick away in handcuffs, the cafe remained silent. Everyone who'd witnessed what happened just stood there, staring at Elena like she'd grown wings. Elena herself was trembling, the adrenaline starting to wear off. She'd just put her hands on someone. She'd drawn attention to herself. In her experience, attention was dangerous. But then Brenda walked toward her, slowly at first, then faster. Elena braced herself for the inevitable. You're fired. Pack your things. Instead, Brenda pulled her into a tight hug. Thank you, Brenda whispered, her voice cracking. Thank you, thank you, thank you. He's been coming here for 2 years. Taking money, scaring customers, breaking things. I called the police so many times, but he always got away. I thought he'd never stop. Elena stood stiffly, not sure what to do. Eventually, she patted Brenda's back awkwardly. I just did what anyone would do. No, Danny said from behind the grill, his voice filled with awe. Nobody would do that. Nobody could do that. I've seen Rick flip a car. And you just took him apart like he was nothing. Where did you learn to fight like that? Elena pulled away from Brenda gently. I used to teach martial arts, she said quietly. Back in Colombia. Before I came here. Frank stepped forward, studying her with the eyes of someone who'd seen combat. That wasn't just martial arts. That was advanced close-quarters combat. You moved like special forces. What were you really doing in Colombia? Elena looked at the floor. Just teaching kids and women how to protect themselves. I had a small school in Bogota. Nothing special. The elderly woman from the corner booth, a tiny gray-haired lady named Mrs. Chun, walked up with her husband shuffling behind her. Young lady, Mrs. Chun said in a wobbly voice. I've lived in this neighborhood for 40 years. I've watched this community suffer under people like Rick Sullivan. The police can't help us. The city doesn't care. But you. She reached out and took Elena's hand in both of hers. You just gave us something we haven't had in a long time. Hope. Elena felt her throat tighten. She wasn't used to this, to gratitude, to being seen. It felt overwhelming. Before she could respond, the door opened and a young woman rushed in, breathless, holding up her phone. Oh my God, she said, looking directly at Elena. You're her. You're the waitress. Elena blinked in confusion. I'm sorry, who are you? I'm Jessica, the woman said. I was walking by when it happened. I filmed the whole thing through the window. She held up her phone, and on the screen was a video. Elena watched herself take down Rick Sullivan in crystal clear high definition. Every move, every technique captured perfectly. Jessica was practically vibrating with excitement. I posted it online like 5 minutes ago, and it's already gone viral. 20,000 views and climbing. People are calling you the silent defender. This is incredible. Elena's stomach dropped. You posted it? Where everyone can see it. Yeah, Jessica said, not picking up on Elena's panic. Why wouldn't I? This is the most amazing thing I've ever seen. You're a hero. Elena's mind raced. A viral video. Exposure. Questions. Her past catching up with her. She'd left Colombia quietly, running from a dangerous situation she didn't like to talk about. An abusive ex with connections. She'd built a new life here, invisible and safe. And now this. I need to go, Elena said suddenly, untying her apron. Brenda, I'm sorry. I have to get home to my daughter. Wait, Brenda said, confused. You're not in trouble. You saved us. Take the night off. Take the week. You deserve it. Elena shook her head, already backing toward the door. I can't. I'm sorry. She pushed through the exit and ran to her old Toyota in the parking lot, her hands shaking as she fumbled with the keys. By the time she got the engine started, her phone was buzzing nonstop. At a red light, she checked it. 67 notifications. Messages from unknown numbers. Social media requests from strangers. And one text from her landlord. Saw the video. You're famous. Rent's still due Friday. Elena wanted to scream. Instead, she drove home in silence, gripping the steering wheel until her knuckles turned white. When she pulled up to her apartment building, a rundown 3-story complex with flickering lights and graffiti on the walls, she sat in the car for a long moment. She could see her window on the second floor. The light was on. Isabella was still awake, waiting for her like always. Elena took a deep breath, grabbed her purse, and headed inside. The apartment was tiny, barely 500 square feet. One room that served as bedroom, living room, and kitchen all at once. But it was clean. Elena made sure it was always clean. And it was filled with Isabella's drawings taped to the walls, bright pictures of princesses and rainbows, and one very special drawing of Elena and Isabella holding hands under a sunshine. Mama! Isabella called out the moment Elena opened the door. The little girl came running, her dark curls bouncing, wearing her favorite unicorn pajamas. Elena scooped her up and held her tight, breathing in the smell of her strawberry shampoo. Hey, baby. Why are you still awake? It's past your bedtime. I wanted to wait for you, Isabella said, wrapping her arms around Elena's neck. Mrs. Rodriguez said you'd be home soon. Mrs. Rodriguez was their neighbor, a kind elderly woman who watched Isabella for free whenever Elena worked late. Did you have a good day at school? Elena asked, carrying Isabella to the small futon. Yes. We learned about multiplication. It's hard, but I'll get better. That's my smart girl, Elena said, kissing her forehead. Her phone buzzed again. Then again. Then again. Mama, why is your phone making so much noise? Isabella asked, tilting her head. Just messages from work, baby, Elena lied, silencing the phone and shoving it in a drawer. But the universe wasn't done with her yet. There was a knock at the door. Elena froze. Nobody knocked this late unless it was trouble. Who is it? Elena called out. Miss Reyes. A woman's voice answered from the other side. My name is Catherine Williams. I saw what you did tonight at the cafe. I'd like to talk to you if you have a moment. It's important. Elena frowned. She looked through the peephole and saw a woman who looked like she'd stepped out of a business magazine. Mid-40s, elegant in a tailored navy suit despite the late hour, with perfectly styled silver-streaked hair. She carried herself with the confidence of someone used to being in charge. Elena cracked the door open, keeping the chain on. How did you find where I live? Catherine smiled gently. I have resources, Miss Reyes. I promise I'm not here to cause trouble. I'm here to offer you an opportunity. I'm not interested, Elena said. Please leave. I know you're scared, Catherine said, her voice kind. I know you're trying to stay invisible. I know you have a daughter to protect. But please just give me 5 minutes. After that, if you want me to leave, I'll disappear and you'll never hear from me again. Elena hesitated. Something about this woman's voice felt genuine. Against her better judgment, she closed the door, unhooked the chain, and opened it wider. You have 5 minutes. Catherine stepped inside and immediately noticed Isabella peeking around the corner. Hello there, Catherine said warmly. You must be Isabella. Your mama is very brave. Isabella smiled shyly. Mama, is she your friend? Not yet, sweetie, Elena said. Go brush your teeth and get ready for bed. I'll be there in a minute. Isabella nodded and scampered off to the bathroom. Catherine waited until the door closed, then turned to Elena. I'll get straight to the point. My name is Catherine Williams, and I'm the founder of Phoenix Rising Initiative. We fund community development projects. I was having dinner 2 blocks from the corner cafe when I saw Jessica's video. Then I did some research. Elena's jaw tightened. What kind of research? I found out you were a 3rd-degree black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and a certified Krav Maga instructor in Colombia. I found out you ran a school that taught self-defense to women and children from low-income communities. I found out you came here 3 years ago with nothing. Catherine paused. I also found out why you left. Elena's heart stopped. What did you find? I know about Javier, Catherine said gently. I know what he did to you. I know why you ran. Elena's hands balled into fists. If you know all that, then you know I can't afford to be in the spotlight. If he finds out where I am. He won't, Catherine interrupted. Because I'm going to help you make sure of it. But first, I want to offer you something. What? Elena asked suspiciously. I want to fund your dream, Catherine said. I want to give you the resources to open your own school here in Phoenix. A place where you can teach women and children to defend themselves. I'll cover the rent, the equipment, the marketing, all of it. Elena stared at her. Why would you do that? Because 20 years ago, I was where you are, Catherine said quietly. I was a single mother working 3 jobs, trying to escape a man who thought he owned me. Someone gave me a chance when no one else would. Now I spend my life looking for people like you. People who have the strength to change lives, but just need someone to believe in them. She pulled out a business card. Think about it. Call me when you're ready. Catherine left, and Elena stood there holding the card, her mind spinning. Isabella came out of the bathroom. Mama, who is that lady? Elena looked down at her daughter and smiled. A real smile this time. I think she might be an angel, baby. Over the next week, the video continued to spread. 1 million views. 5 million. 10 million. News outlets picked it up. Local Phoenix stations ran segments calling her a hometown hero. The mayor's office reached out. But more importantly, messages started coming in from women all over the city. Thank you for showing me I don't have to be afraid. I've been in an abusive relationship for 6 years. Watching you fight gave me the courage to leave. Can you teach my daughter to be strong like you? Message after message. Story after story. Women who saw themselves in Elena. Women who needed what she had to offer. On Friday, exactly 1 week after the incident, Elena picked up the phone and called Catherine Williams. I'm ready, she said. Let's build something. 6 months later, the Phoenix Rising Self-Defense Academy stood in a refurbished building on East McDowell Road. Clean mats covered the floors. Mirrors lined the walls. Heavy bags hung from the ceiling. And a sign outside read, "Everyone deserves to feel safe. Everyone deserves to fight back." Inside, 40 women and girls, ages 8 to 70, practiced strikes and blocks under Elena's guidance. She walked among them in a traditional black GI, her third-degree black belt tied around her waist. "Remember," Elena called out, "power doesn't come from size. It comes from knowing where to strike and when." A tiny girl named Amara raised her hand. "Miss Elena, what if the person is really, really big? Like that man in the video?" The whole class turned to look at Elena. She smiled. "Then you use their size against them. Big people move slower. They expect you to run. So you get close, stay low, and find the weak points. Size doesn't matter if you know what you're doing." After class, Elena sat in her small office. The walls were covered with photos of students, graduation ceremonies, thank you cards. On her desk was a framed screenshot of the viral video, not because she was proud of the fame, but because it reminded her of the moment everything changed. There was a knock on the door. "Come in," Elena said. The door opened and Rick Sullivan walked in. Elena's body went rigid. She stood up, moving into a defensive stance. Rick raised his hands immediately. "It's okay. I'm not here to cause trouble. I promise." "What are you doing here?" Elena demanded. "How did you get out?" "I got out 3 months ago," Rick said. "Good behavior. Anger management classes. And I've been trying to find you ever since. To apologize." Elena stared at him. Rick looked different. He'd lost weight. His eyes didn't have that wild look anymore. He seemed humble. "I was messed up," Rick continued. "Angry at the world. Taking it out on people who didn't deserve it. What you did that night, it was the wake-up call I needed. For the first time in my life, someone stood up to me and won. It made me realize I wasn't invincible. I was just a bully. And now what?" Elena asked. "I want to volunteer," Rick said. "Here at the school. I'm not asking to teach. I know I'm not qualified, but I can help move equipment, fix things, whatever you need. I want to be part of something good." Elena studied him for a long moment. "Why should I trust you?" "You shouldn't," Rick admitted. "But I'm asking you to give me a chance anyway. I'm trying to be better." Elena sighed. "Fine. But you step out of line once and you're gone." "Understood," Rick said, relief flooding his face. "Thank you." Over the following months, Rick proved himself. He showed up every day, did whatever was asked, and never complained. The students who'd been terrified of him slowly began to trust him. He became the gentle giant who helped kids reach high shelves. One afternoon, a new student came in. A woman named Angela with a black eye and 2 young daughters. She sat down with Elena in the office. "My husband hits me," Angela said, her hands shaking. "He hits the girls sometimes too. I saw your video. I saw you stand up to that man, and I thought, if she can do it, maybe I can too." Elena reached across the desk and took Angela's hand. "You're already protecting them by being here. And I promise you, we're going to make sure you never feel helpless again." 3 months later, Angela had transformed. She learned to throw punches with confidence, to escape holds, to carry herself with strength. When she finally left her husband and got a restraining order, she did it with her head held high. 1 year after the incident, the academy held its first belt ceremony. 50 students stood in rows wearing their white GIs. Elena stood at the front, her heart full. "Today, you're not just earning a belt," Elena said. "You're earning the knowledge that you are capable, that you don't have to live in fear, that you have power over your own life." Catherine stood and addressed the crowd. "A year ago, I watched a video of a waitress taking down a giant. But what I really saw was a woman who refused to let fear control her. This academy isn't just a gym. It's proof that strength isn't about how big you are. It's about how brave you're willing to be." The crowd erupted in applause. That night, Elena sat alone on the mat in the empty academy. She thought about the scared waitress she'd been just a year ago. That version of herself felt like a lifetime ago. She pulled out her phone and saw a message from Jessica, who'd made a follow-up documentary. It had 500,000 views. At the end, text appeared. "One moment of bravery can change a life. One person standing up can inspire a movement. Be the person who stands up." Elena smiled and set the phone down. For the first time in years, she felt at peace. Not because life was easy, but because she was finally living her purpose. The moral of this story is simple but powerful. Strength isn't measured by size or volume. It's measured by courage. by the willingness to stand up when everything in you is screaming to run. We all have moments where we can choose to be invisible or to be brave. And sometimes the bravest thing you can do is refuse to let fear win. The quietest person in the room might just be the most powerful. Never underestimate someone just because they choose to be kind, to be gentle, to be quiet. Because when the moment comes, when someone they love is threatened or when injustice stands right in front of them, that quiet strength can become a storm. And that storm can change everything.